Good evening, everybody. 7 o'clock, and we'll make a start. First of all, I'd just like to say a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Tony Middleton. I'll be hosting this evening. It's really fantastic to see such a huge audience and level of interest in the Transform Leatherhead programme. I'd also like to welcome all of our online viewers tonight. This event is being live streamed, so all our online viewers will have an opportunity to also participate in the event this evening. Thank you already. You've obviously worked out how to work this fantastic online polling system. For those of you who haven't, you can scan this QR code. It takes you to a website, and you can answer a whole range of questions that we're going to be putting to you this evening. Just a little bit about myself. I run an organisation called Coast to Capital. We've been involved with the Transform Leatherhead programme for a number of years, being one of the early funders. But I'm here tonight to be the impartial chair and to really ensure that there's a fair balance between the questions that you ask and put to our panellists, and also to ensure that our panellists can answer them as fully as possible. We've got a range of speakers this evening, and the format will be each speaker will run through a series of slides on the screen, talk about the project, and then at the end of the evening there'll be a question and answer session where you'll all have an opportunity to ask any questions of the panel that you may feel appropriate. Just a few housekeeping rules. Toilets are in the auditorium area or the entrance area. There are no planned fire alarms this evening, so if the alarm does go off, we all get out via the exits. So I think the only other thing I wanted to say is, obviously, we will be using this online polling system throughout the evening. We'll give you an opportunity to get your smartphones out and answer the questions and put your views forward. There'll be lots of time after the event to ask any more questions. The panellists will all, I think, be hanging around for a while, probably not too late, but certainly for a while after the event. And there'll be further opportunities to input and ask any questions via the website, and I'll go through those means later on in the evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, and that's Councillor Stephen Cooksey. Councillor Cooksey is the leader of Mole Valley District Council, and he's just going to say a few words this evening. Stephen.
Thank you, Tony, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It's good to...
Do you want to try? Yeah, no, I think it's switched on. Do you maybe hold it a bit nearer?
Can we hear? That's good. I'll start again. Thank you, Tony, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It's good to see so many residents here, and I hope that you have a very informative and helpful evening. The Transport Leatherhead programme has made significant progress since we held the forum this time last year here in this theatre. In a few minutes, I will hand over to Councillor Ciara Vivian Robinson, Cabinet Member for Projects, under whose Cabinet portfolio the Transform Leatherhead programme sits. She will start the evening by updating you on a number of key projects, including Clare House and James House, the Riverside area, and some town centre initiatives. This will be followed by a short presentation from retail property experts Shackleton, who will talk us through some of the current trends in UK high streets before handing over to Kia Property Development, our joint venture partners in the Leatherhead Partnership. They're joined on stage by the architects who have been working hard on Bull Hill and the Swan Centre proposals, and are looking forward to sharing the updated proposals for schemes with you. The evening will finish with an appropriate opportunity for questions to be put to the panel, which will also include officers from the District Council. I hope that you'll find this evening informative, and we look forward to receiving your feedback. So thank you. Thank you, Tony. Back over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooksey. I'd just like to introduce Councillor Kira Vivian Robinson, Cabinet Member, as Councillor Cooksey said. Over to you, and you're going to tell us a little bit more about the project. Thanks.
Lovely. Right, so I will go through, well, I won't go through the welcoming introductions because we've already got that, but some of the people who are on the panel this evening, I think a lot of these names will be familiar because some of us have been around for a while and were here last year, but some will be new, and obviously all looking forward to sort of welcoming you and speaking to you about Transform Leatherhead. So I think it was a very useful sort of poll at the start in terms of how many people here have been to a Transform Leatherhead forum before, and it was a sort of a fairly even split as far as I can see. So to those of you who haven't come before, thank you very much for coming, and obviously for those who've been before, thank you for coming again and finding out sort of what we have been doing over the last year. I think it's worth, given that we have a lot of people who haven't been here before, going through a little bit about the overview to Transform Leatherhead and sort of where we are and how we got here. So the Transform Leatherhead Master Plan was a strategy which was prepared by Mole Valley District Council by a multidisciplinary team. It was shaped through a number of consultations in 2015 and 2016, firstly seeking to identify the issues and the opportunities which the town had, and then secondly looking to get feedback on the draft proposals. The feedback at the time was very supportive. 75% of residents agreed with the draft vision, and the vision is set out on the slide there, showing that it should be a friendly, vibrant and lively modern market town where people of all ages can shop, eat, relax and have fun by the riverside. So that was sort of supported by residents, and 69% also agreed with the draft ideas. A third round of consultation on the proposed master plan took place in April to May 2016, and again feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So the purpose of the master plan, amongst other things, was to try to engender community support for the transformation, enable robust and commercially viable proposals that are attractive to potential investors, enhance Leatherhead from an economic and social perspective, support proposals for environmental and transport improvements, and that master plan then formed the basis to enable the council to move forward and appoint the development partners. So the master plan took a holistic approach to the town and divided the area into quarters. And what you see on the slide here are the different quarters, and I'll go through each of them in turn. But I think a really key element of this is to really draw together how each quarter, the Riverside quarter, the retail and leisure quarter, and the urban quarter work together. Individually they work, but they also have to work together to support economic vitality and the quality of the town centre as a whole. So the Riverside quarter, it was predominantly Clare and James House and the Riverside Park. The retail and leisure quarter is the area that we sort of think of as Church Street, the Swan Centre and the town centre public realm. And then the urban quarter is primarily what we would think of as Bull Hill. And as you see there, the different links in terms of how each of those different elements work together in terms of increasing footfall, boosting the economy, improving retail, then all leads towards that overall vision, which is the friendly, vibrant, lively Leatherhead, where we can all shop, eat, relax and have fun. Some of the things that were brought out from the master plan was that we wanted Leatherhead to be reinvented, expanded and transformed to realise its potential as a distinctive, enterprising and highly regarded market town, that the town centre should be highly accessible by all forms of transport, and that we wanted to try to encourage a wider range of shops, new housing, leisure and community facilities. So just going through some of the different elements of those, some of the different quarters. Hopefully everyone will have been down to see what has been going on at Clare House and James House. For anyone who has been there, they will see that there has already been quite a transformation in that Clare House and James House has now been demolished. And we have now got a brand new car park, which is looking pretty fantastic, really. So the proposals for Clare House and James House were that we should have a sort of a gateway development there, and in summer 2024 we identified McCarthy Stone as a developer for the site. They have put forward a proposal which has gone for a sort of initial planning application, looking to provide 37 flats with community space and a ground floor cafe, plus public realm improvements, and that includes to the front where the river is. The demolition was completed in 2024, which was courtesy of a grant fund from the Brownfield Land Release Fund to sort of help move that along. And I think for anyone who has been walking down by the river, they will have seen the mural, which I think is still in progress. It isn't finished as far as I'm aware, which is being produced by a local artist, Daniel Strauger. So very, very colourful and something to keep us all entertained and livened in the slightly dull weather we've got at the moment. So if I move on to the next slide, this is a sort of an illustrative sort of picture showing what the proposal is. So as I've said, sort of a new building with sort of 37 1- and 2-bedroom retirement living units, and then public realm improvements. And so the whole point there was to bring people down to the riverside for them to be able to enjoy the area. So then moving on to the riverside area, and the improvements that we want to make to that are all dependent on the development of Clare and James House. The funding for those improvements will come from the sale of Clare and James House. But having said that, we have already made a start, and hopefully some of you will have been involved or will have attended some of the consultations that we held about the Riverside Park, where we sort of put forward a number of different options on what some of the things that people would like to see, such as a children's play area, improved sort of frontages onto the river, improvements to Mansion House Gardens. I'll go on to those in a moment. But all of those are sort of still in the process of sort of being considered and refined. And once we have, hopefully, the planning application and the sale of Clare and James House, we'll be able to progress those a little bit further. But I do think it's worth saying that the first stage of improvements to the Mansion House Gardens, which you'll see up in the corner there, has already started with the replanting of a lot of lavender plants, and that was sort of carried out with volunteers from CGI and from Keir, obviously here this evening. So some of the other town centre initiatives that hopefully residents are all aware of. So following a campaign that started quite a while ago now in July 2022, we did manage to get some positive news in relation to a banking hub in Leatherhead. It was recognised by Link, who are the organisation who determine whether a town needs a banking hub, that there was a need for additional services in Leatherhead in the form of an automated deposit service. We did ask Link to review the decision that it didn't require a full banking hub, because we challenged some of the figures that they were relying on in terms of resident population and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, just today we have heard back from the Link saying that they don't accept our appeal. So we will need to spend a little bit more time looking at the reasons that they have given for that. But at the moment, it appears that we will have the automated deposit service, but not a full hub. However, on more positive news, the BID steering group, this is a group of businesses who have been exploring the feasibility of a business improvement district for Leatherhead, and their sort of role has been to look at whether or not there is sufficient support for the concept amongst businesses in Leatherhead. There have been a number of drop-in sessions which were held last November, and we are currently waiting for their decision on whether they wish to progress to the next stage, and some of that has been sort of supported by Mole Valley District Council. My understanding is that there is broad support, and certainly it's something that a lot of other towns in the local area do have and certainly benefit from. So it would be great to see something like that getting set up in Leatherhead. Other things going on in the local area, obviously, well, hopefully residents are all aware that Surrey Police initially planned to relocate their headquarters from Mount Brown in Guildford onto Cleve Road in Leatherhead. That proposal was somewhat diluted, and they then decided to retain the Mount Brown headquarters, but they are now intending to establish the East Surrey Divisional Headquarters on the Cleve Road site. That will also include some residential development, including key worker accommodation and some new green space on the site. Again, they have held a consultation in December 2024 on their proposals, and very recently they have submitted a screening application which indicates that they hope to have their headquarter building there, plus sort of between 200 and 250 units of accommodation. Other things sort of locally, Co-Tribe, anyone sort of walking through Bull Hill at the moment, they will have seen that we have established a partnership with a co-working space in Park House. That's with Co-Tribe. It provides flexible workspace for people who are looking for an alternative to working from home, or for businesses who just need somewhere to sort of sit and meet with their employees. It's an alternative to the traditional serviced offices, and it is very conveniently located for the town centre and the railway station, and has proved to be very popular. So please, if you're looking for some space, then get in touch. And finally, again, the education is seen as a key factor and bringing more people into the town centre. And so we were delighted to have a sixth form college express an interest in opening in Leatherhead. They are intending on opening in September 2025, and that will provide a great opportunity to get additional spend both for the leisure centre and obviously for town centre businesses, so bringing some sort of youth and vitality into the area. Touching on some of the sort of cultural events, the Swan Centre run a series of events throughout the year. They are always imaginative, they are always well received. Some of the things that are planned for this year, just sort of touching on a couple of things there, the VE Day celebrations, the sort of the archive exhibition going on at the Thorndike Theatre here. So just, obviously keeping in and trying to make sure that we drive footfall into the town centre as much as possible. And then I think finally, before I hand over, some of the other improvements in terms of sports and leisure in the local area. Hopefully everybody is aware that GLL Better have now taken over Leatherhead Leisure Centre, and that they have really seen a huge transformation take place already in terms of the facilities that are provided there. They have invested £64,000 in an outdoor soft play area. They have refurbished the gym with 125 stations of new techno gym equipment. There are now 3 state-of-the-art fitness studios. There is a new events venue and a sort of reconfigured pool heating system and sort of obviously the solar carports. And in addition to that, we're looking at a new social area and upgrades to changing rooms. So for anybody who hasn't been down to the leisure centre, please do go down and have a look. In addition to that, behind the centre, for anyone who is familiar with padel, or it might be padel, never know how you're supposed to say that, there is a planning approval or planning permission for 6 courts for padel behind the leisure centre on what was the former boating lake. That consent, or those consents, were obtained in 2024, and we are hoping that construction will start this year. That is being brought forward by a third party, but I believe that padel is one of the biggest or quickest growing sports in Europe, so that will really be a big draw for people coming into Leatherhead. And then I don't want to sort of finish without mentioning some of the other things that go on around the leisure centre. So obviously we have the very well supported Leatherhead Football Club, and just a very quick word out to wish best wishes to David Pope, who's unfortunately been unwell recently, and also the Ramblers Wellbeing Walks, which are still sort of taking place, I believe, every Sunday, starting at the leisure centre. So those are some of the sort of leisure activities. Okay. Oh, thank you very much for correcting that. For anybody who didn't hear that, the wellbeing walks are Thursdays at 10:30. Right, thank you for that. very, very good. Right, so I think at that point I hand back over to Tony.
Thank you very much, Kira. Thank you for that very comprehensive update. I don't know what padel is, so I'd be interested if anyone does know what padel is, but I'm going to look that up when I get home this evening. Paddle, thank you. And thanks for also the feedback on the wellbeing walks. That's really useful. We wanted to ask a question next. And it's not appeared, so I might ask my able... There it is. Right. Do I have to start the button or... No? Good. What makes a successful town centre? And you can choose any one of those individual points at the bottom, any one, or in fact I think you can choose more than one. So please press away. Public spaces. I think green space would be in public spaces or walking and cycling. Yes, I can. Mix of uses: shops, restaurants, housing, health services, attractive public services, buildings and infrastructure, and I would include green spaces in attractive public services, walking and cycling routes, public transport connections, parking, events, and a high footfall. And I think what we're seeing, and we've certainly seen post-COVID, is the resurgence of the importance of town centres, particularly the importance of retail in town centres. Although many of us order stuff online, we use online platforms very regularly, there is really nothing like going to a local town centre and experiencing some of the retail that you can find there. And I think it's really important that there is a resurgence in retail in town centres. And it's interesting, I think this poll is really reflecting that. 81% of you are saying shops, restaurants, housing and health services. It would be interesting to see the split between each of those elements. Public spaces really coming out very strongly, and I think from Kira's presentation you will have seen the emphasis that I think the council's putting in creating new public spaces, or at least improving existing public spaces. Public transport connections, really important, and certainly increasingly important in the world we live in today, particularly with the objectives for carbon reduction. Events, we're seeing a lot of events occurring in town centres, and some of the more successful town centres in the UK are hosting very, very regular events to drive footfall. People come in, they experience the event, and they spend money at the same time, which is good for our local retailers. So events are very important, and of course footfall. So before we now move on, I wanted to introduce our next speaker, who's Tony Moore. Tony is a specialist in retail, and hopefully, Tony, wherever you are, where is Tony? There he is. Tony, you'll help decipher some of these results from our audience today. So over to you, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. I'm Tony Moore from Shackleton. I've been asked to advise the Leatherhead Partnership on the retail vision and strategy specifically for the Swan Centre and Bull Hill sites. So, in the next few slides, I'm going to talk you through the UK high streets and the trends that we are seeing emerging that are shaping our high streets for the future. We're going to compare that to Leatherhead and look at the health of Leatherhead as a retail destination, and then consider what's missing in the town at the moment, the challenges that it has faced. Obviously, the high street has been through some challenging years, and we're going to look at some improvements that can be made within the scope of the Leatherhead Partnership proposals. And then we'll look at the big question, perhaps, what if no improvements are made, and the results of that. So, I think it's fair to say that our high streets are going through a major transition, probably the biggest transition they've ever been through, to try and match up with modern consumer demands and shopping habits. So let's look at specifically what trends are shaping their future. Localism, which is a desire for convenience, what you might call neighbourhood shopping. We're seeing an increase in that, which was fast-forwarded during the pandemic, with now current estimate of 41% spending some of their working week working remotely. Foodism. Food is a new fashion, and then an ongoing rise in the variety of food on offer in casual dining and a desire for coffee shops. Playtime. This is the variety of leisure activities increasing all the time, with new operators coming in all the time. And for those of you that don't know what competitive socialising is, it basically means throwing some things at something else for fun in a social environment. Childcare, rise in demand for nursery places has led to a rise in demand for nurseries, or at least for lots of new operators coming into the sector. There's still challenges around staffing, but we're seeing new operators looking for to open new nurseries. For some reason, lots of people went out and bought a dog during the pandemic, and now we have a 62% of households owning pets. The knock-on effect of this has been a rise in dog grooming parlours, and then those people that are finding themselves going back to work, they now want somewhere to put their dogs, so now there's a rise in doggy daycare, and more recently, inevitably a rise in demand for new veterinary practices. Fitness and well-being, again, lots of new types of ways to keep fit and improve our well-being, and again, lots of new operators coming into the market. I think it's fair to say that fitness and well-being is now a permanent feature within our town centres. Online shopping, so the biggest impact on our high street, undoubtedly, and the pandemic fast-forwarded that change, and now an estimate 30% of our spend is going online. And we should also mention active intervention, which is partly what we're doing here today. That's a reaction to the struggles that UK high streets have been facing under the last government and under this government. So lots of new initiatives that have been driven by stakeholders, by local authorities, by developers, local businesses, whatever they may be, whether it's bringing new residential and services back into town centres to perhaps even shrink the amount of retail and repurposing uses into other uses like residential or offices. So, all of those are all the UK high street trends going on at the moment, and there's others, but let's look at how Leatherhead compares to that. Well, Leatherhead only retains 6.75% of its catchment expenditure. In actual fact, that figure has been thrown around for quite some time, for quite a few years, and it was produced by a research company called CACI. I think at the time the master plan was produced, so some years ago. And today I got an update of that figure. It's now 6.6%, so dropping further. What that means is that almost 95% of the available cash within Leatherhead's catchment is being spent on shopping and dining and playing elsewhere. And that means for convenience, they might be spending Ashted, Fetcham, Bookham, Dorking, Epsom, or for experience in places like Kingston, Guildford, or for perhaps an all-day shopping and dining experience, Bluewater and London. Leatherhead has lost its multiples, its retail chains, banks, fashion stores, convenience, and variety. And in the live study just earlier mentioned about there was a definite desire for more variety, more tenant mix. Leatherhead had gained pound shops, vacant shops, low quality stores, low quality F&B, food and beverage. So this is a plan of Leatherhead High Street. The pink indicates the large high street chains that have left Leatherhead since 2009. Now, some of these have left all of the UK's high streets, some of them have just gone online, some of them have merged into other retailers. And this isn't just Leatherhead, obviously there's many, many high streets across the country that have seen that same transition. But the point here is that these high street names have left Leatherhead and they haven't been replaced with the next new popular high street name. So what does all this mean? It means a loss of experience, it means loss of footfall in the town centre, and means loss of spending. So within our study, and in all town studies that we do, we always look at what's missing or underrepresented in a town. And one of those things is the town's profile or its exposure, how big a sort of marketing force the town can be. And a useful way to measure that is to look at every single shop and restaurant and cafe and look at their social media presence. Because social media marketing and advertising and pushing your presence out there is a very, very cost-effective way of marketing yourself. And you can imagine in a town where you may have a few hundred retailers, the addition of all of those retailers, if they're all pushing themselves online with a strong online presence, the combination of all of that is a really, really powerful marketing force for a town. So we asked the question, how many of Leatherhead's shops, cafes and restaurants have little or no social media presence? And that was 80%. So, as I say, we look at what use categories might be missing in a town centre, and that helps us build up a picture of what we could fight to introduce back into a town centre. And we found 23 use categories, which I'll come on and I'll explain exactly what those are in a moment, but 23 use categories missing from Leatherhead Town Centre. And then we considered, well, which uses will be harder or easier to attract into Leatherhead? Towards the easier end of the scale, we might say restaurant chains as part of the new development proposals, butchers, independent restaurants. Remember, this is underrepresented as well. There could be room for more quality coffee shops, other community uses, and fitness and well-being. And then, harder to achieve will be drawing back those large retail chains, particularly fashion chains, family entertainment, competitive socialising I mentioned earlier, large family entertainment leisure hubs, and then perhaps somewhere in the middle is about attracting quality independent retailers back into the town. And we've included pet grooming there and children's nursery, but also boutique cinema, which leads us on to talk about the importance of a leisure anchor, which, as many of you will know, is part of the proposals for the Swan Centre. And that leisure anchor could be, again, competitive socialising, so modern ways to spend social time with each other in a fun, sporty kind of environment. A boutique cinema. I will talk about the cinema in more detail. A sports-related leisure use, a food hall, could be a street food.
Sorry, could we let the speaker finish? There'll be a lot of time for questions and answers later on, I promise you that, and I'll make sure that all your voices are heard in that session. But if we could kindly let Tony just finish the slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Food hall, so street food hall that we've seen very successful in other town centres. So what's the benefits of introducing a new leisure anchor into the development? Well, a massive boost in social media presence, which we referred to earlier. Attracting footfall for the whole town, including the theatre. Attracting a different audience, perhaps than the theatre, so additional footfall again. And improve afternoon and nighttime economy for all of the businesses. To road test and referring to the cinema in particular, I think it's important to even see if there's demand out there. So we've been instructed we spoke to 3 independent cinema operators to gauge their interest in coming into Leatherhead. Real Cinema, which is very much as popcorn, what we call a popcorn cinema, showing all the latest blockbusters, every man a more elevated experience with a restaurant and a bar. The Light, which is a bigger operation because they include cinema and food and bar, as well as a play element to them as well. So I'm going to come on to some positives, so don't focus too much on this now, but I put this in before the positives about what we can all do to improve. So, but what if we do nothing? What could Leatherhead look like in 5 years' time? Well, on this trajectory, further decrease in footfall, further loss of big brands, and neighbouring towns benefiting from that, strengthening, attracting further brands, perhaps out of the town centre. which means obviously an increase in empty shops, an increase in poor quality shops, and further decrease in the catchment area. So what's needed and why? Well, first off, what I'm advising on and what we're here to partly display today is the two proposals being delivered by the Leatherhead Partnership, which are essential and a big step towards revitalising the town. So the architects involved will be coming on shortly and they'll talk you through the latest proposals. But in short, as you probably already know, Bull Hill delivering offices, residential amenity, Swan Centre, leisure, retail, F&B. These are very important together because Bull Hill is going to drive more footfall, which is going to make the proposed improvements to the Swan Centre that bit more reliable. And together this is about driving more footfall back into the town centre. So, what can be achieved within the scope of the development proposals? And I stress that this isn't a detailed town-wide strategy report that we've produced. This is focused on the proposals. However, we've made obviously lots of observations about the town as a whole to make it relative to that. So, the development would look to introduce quality food and beverage, a new leisure, which will increase footfall and reduce this spend leakage to surrounding areas. Inspiring architecture. The Swan Centre, as you'll see later, will have a very dramatic statement new entrance to it and an active public realm in front of it. One would hope that these development proposals will be a catalyst for further revitalisation, which has been seen in lots of other towns across the country where there have been these big steps in revitalisation. They have kick-started things like, we mentioned events earlier, activation events, and both of these should be involving local businesses, stakeholders, owners, residents, and Mole Valley as well. And together, this is going to be boosting the nighttime economy with new food and beverage and leisure. This gets us further towards making a town centre that is more relative to the local demographic. The figure about showing that there is spend leakage means that the people of Leatherhead are spending too much of their cash elsewhere, which means that Leatherhead is not being properly representative of its catchment population. And this gets us just a little bit further step in the right direction. It helps us a bit of balance between quality independent occupiers and multiples, and make no mistake that across the country's quality independents are leading the charge in making our high streets less homogenised and more interactive, more exciting, more experience, and they're just as important as bringing in new big brands. Attract uses that generate footfall throughout the day. So this is about just not having peaks in the footfall. It's about spreading out throughout the day. And picking up the point earlier, more variety and marketing, an active marketing program, encouraging all to engage with marketing initiatives across the town and improve the social media footprint. So what are the outcomes of this? Well, this is an overgeneralised approach, but it's all heading towards increased experience, increased footfall, and increased spend. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony. Really interesting insights there, and I do appreciate how emotive this is and important it is to you all. And all of us, I think, have got very different opinions on what attracts us to a town centre. I think one of the interesting things in Tony's talk was around this whole concept of having to compete. Leatherhead has to compete with other towns to keep that spend and to keep that vibrancy. And if you look at what's happened to Red Hill, and you know, again, everyone's got different views on Red Hill, but one of the things that Red Hill has done is introduce the concept Tony mentioned of competitive socialising. And I didn't have any idea what competitive socialising meant until I went to the Light at Red Hill. Now, the Light is not for everyone. You know, it's a family event. It's mainly geared to, you know, children, I guess, and they can have fun and enjoy things like throwing axes, playing pool, a whole range of different things. But what the Light has done for Red Hill is it's driven up footfall, and that footfall has then encouraged other independent retailers to come into Red Hill. And if many of you will know Red Hill, what Red Hill was like before the redevelopment and what it's like now. You will all have your own opinions on whether you think it's good or bad, but the point of that Tony made was these things drive up footfall. So it's about Leatherhead competing with other town centres. So what we wanted to do was hear from you now as to what attracts you to Leatherhead Town Centre today in its current form. Why do you come to Leatherhead Town Centre? And I hope someone's going to start it. Do I have to start? There's actually... Press again. There's no button on the screen appeared, so I haven't got that blue button. The Marvel's model technology. There we are. Yeah. What? If you try again. There we go. And the technology's not working. Fantastic. Let's dispense with the technology. Could we have 10 people just shout, what brings you to Leatherhead?
Green spaces.
Green spaces, thank you.
Groceries.
Groceries, thank you. Shopping. Coffee. Theatre. Restaurant. History. Thank you. Lady there, putting your hands up very politely. Thank you for being so polite.
During the period between school shutting and the evening economy, because they can't stop in a car and get out of the car in the high street.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very well said, and again, this is emotive and very personal. Actually, the technology is working, so thank you for making it work. Could you all press your buttons or do whatever you do on the mobiles to see what's happening? Shall I read them out there? Shopping, eating and drinking, work, well, that's interesting, leisure and recreation, culture, theatre, museum and institute, transport connections, open spaces, health and well-being, religion and worship. So keep pressing, but it's pretty clear shopping, eating and drinking are dominating there. Open spaces. What stops you coming in?
Gyratory system.
Parking. One at a time, sorry. Yeah, want to make sure. We are taking notes this evening, so don't worry. We'll try and capture everything that you're saying. Parking's a big thing, clearly. Gentleman there with his hand up. That's much better to put your hands up. I can barely see you, but...
I just want to reconfirm, in the development, and I hope I understand correctly, that the town centre, the Swan Centre, would be a covered area, for example, like the Ashley Centre in Epsom, where you actually get a warmth which increases the well-being as you shop, rather than the sort of cold, chilly atmosphere. That it's all contained, so that people can enjoy it.
Thank you for that. I think the next speaker will hopefully cover some of that in the next presentation. Thank you for those points. Sorry about the technology. I'm going to hand over to our next speaker now, and that is the consortium that's been appointed by the council to undertake the redevelopment of Bull Hill and the Swan Centre. And clearly, the joint venture that the council formed was a milestone. You know, it's taken a long while to get this joint venture together. There is a consortium that's been formed, and I'm going to hand over to Alex and Lee from Kia. And Kia are a very large regeneration organisation. They're joined also by colleagues from TP Bennett, who are the principal architects. So without further ado, perhaps you can maybe answer some of the questions that were raised. Thank you.
The speaker on? Excellent. Hi, well, I'm neither Alex or Lee. I'm David Bridges. I'm the Managing Director for Residential and Regeneration at Kia Property. Unfortunately, my colleague Alex, who's been to a number of these events, is coughing and spluttering, so we took the last-minute decision that I'll do the presenting today. Clickers there. Lovely. Let's see whether we move on. So just a quick one, the Leatherhead Partnership, who we are. So as I say, I'm from Kia Property. The Leatherhead Partnership is a 50-50 joint venture between ourselves and Mole Valley District Council. Our role really is the developer, as is the development managers, to provide that sort of expertise in terms of delivery, but also through this process to manage a consultative process, to listen to you. And I hope that you'll see when we present some stuff later on that we have listened, we've evolved, we've responded to your feedback, but also to sort of give that expertise in terms of the stresses and strains, the pulls and the pushes of how you make development work in these circumstances. It is not straightforward. It is not an easy task. So that's what we're trying to bring to this, and hopefully over time will be a big part of this transformation of Leatherhead that's been talked about today. Just a few sort of images behind us in terms of how we've sought to engage through this process. And I saw mention earlier about Mansion Gardens, the 200 new lavender plants that we bought and we helped to plant. So hopefully that's improving the fragrance and so on. A lot of time in local schools, and we think that's really important. You know, that is the future. And we want those people to be involved, to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and also to give their voice as to the town that they want to live in as they grow and develop. In terms of the feedback so far, there's a number of pieces up here. The first round of consultation started last July and closed in September. We had over 800 feedback forms, over 140 emails, so a lot of engagement. A community design review panel, you know, lots of experts in there, but also people within the community who know the history of Leatherhead, what's happened, what's worked, what's not worked, and that's been hugely important. We've had a webinar so people could engage online. We've hosted in-person events at a number of places, and 600 people visited those in-person events, and again, you can see the volume of interest tonight. It's interesting to me hearing the sort of call-outs from the audience here. So we asked, you know, what are the things that are most important to you? I'm going to just talk to this piece. I've heard that sort of shouted on a number of occasions, public open space and landscaping, and I hope you will see a real evolution in our approach to that, and something that I think does reflect, you know, the aspirations that we should have. But also a lot about the height of the buildings. You know, how do we make sure that this doesn't overpower the centre of Leatherhead? Again, you'll see a lot of evolution and some really interesting visuals that help you to understand what this looks like and how it will drive things forwards. In terms of the Swan Centre, again, a little bit in line with Tona's piece. The two sort of biggest pieces that came through were the improved range of shops I think Tony presented a very compelling case here. We see this all around the country. As he said, this is not Leatherhead alone. So many towns have got that sort of slow downward spiral, and this is something that hopefully we can address here. And Bull Hill and the Swan Centre, they're two sides of the same coin. One will help to create the funds to bring the other one forward, and that's a really important piece. So how can we get that improved range of shops? I'm almost scared to use the word cinema here, but new cinema and leisure facilities. I have to say I was a little bit terrified at the thought of children throwing axes, but maybe that's just my nervousness. But again, there's that multiplicative effect. If you can get that working, you drive the daytime economy, you drive the nighttime economy. And for what it's worth, I don't see a conflict with having a theatre and a cinema. Most towns will have that. I think both of those can be complementary. They're a different audience, and they really help to drive footfall through the night and day. And then transport connections, and again, thank you to the lady in the corner there for making that point. We know that's an important piece to get right. So some of the key themes that came through here, very much support for that modern, attractive shopping centre, the range, the variety. Again, I heard lots of people shouting out, we need grocery connections, we need the sort of range of shopping opportunities and experiences. Building heights, and this is written quite neutrally, strong interest in the potential height of new buildings and how this might impact the town's character. Again, as I said, the visuals I think you'll find very informative there. The third piece was around traffic, that interaction, how that works and how that moves things forward. And then on the right-hand side, that public green spaces. And again, that's probably been the thing I've heard the loudest when Tony's asked for the shout-outs from the audience. So, statement of community involvement, just really to say that Mole Valley have been very much driving to get something where the voice of the consumers, the members of or residents of the area are involved. They've got that from December 2021, and we've worked very hard to get that level of involvement. As we've said there, huge number of events that have taken place over a period of time. Okay, so listen, I've talked about process. Now let's talk about outcomes and what we're putting forward for the next stage of consultation. This is, again, something to be talked about. Okay?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stuart Cuss. I work for TP Bennett Architects, and together with a wider team of engineers and advisors, we've been working on proposals for the Bull Hill site over a year now within Leatherhead. So many of you may have met me before at some of the public consultation events. These happened last summer, and we presented a scheme then which started to amalgamate all of the sort of thinking and understanding that we'd undertaken of the town centre of Leatherhead and the wider region, the Surrey Hills, and we put forward a proposal to gain your feedback and start to understand what were the really kind of key themes that you really wanted to see on Bull Hill or that concerned you, and that was all recorded over the last summer. So what you can see on the screen now are some of the kind of key points which were made to us during that process. And we've been through these a couple of times already. But the main things that we've been reflecting on as architects, I'll just focus on three of these. So preserving the green space, and that's something that's really important to local residents. We're obviously where Leatherhead Park, also known as Red House Gardens, takes about sort of 50% of the space on the Bull Hill site today. And I know that local residents feel really strongly about the preservation of that green space and making sure that there's a connection to nature and a connection to the wider green landscape beyond the town centre. There's also concern about building heights, and in particular building heights in the southeast area of the site. That's the part of the site which is closest to the high street and to the town centre. And many of you will be aware the town centre is a conservation area. There's a couple of listed buildings directly opposite that corner of the Bull Hill site. And we really want to make sure that we're responding to those sensitive adjacencies, and we're putting lower buildings where there's a sensitive relationship, and if there's opportunity for a taller building, then that's in the right location. And that's something we've really been reflecting on over the last few months. And then finally, there are many points on screen, but another one, it feels too urban in character. And how do we make something that fits in? How do we design a scheme that people recognise as of Leatherhead, doesn't necessarily look like any other proposal elsewhere in the UK, and it feels special, and people want to visit it, and people want to pass through it. And so these are the kind of things that have been shaping our proposals. It's been mentioned that obviously we've had the public consultation events last year. There's been many other meetings, both with the local planning authority, the design review process, which was mentioned, and many other stakeholders who have been contributing to designs in addition to all the feedback that we've gained from yourselves. So onto that last point, and how do you stitch something into Leatherhead? And these are some of the themes that we're starting to explore. So, how can this design evolve, and what do we need to do to it to make people feel like it belongs in their town? On the left-hand side, Bull Hill used to be the home of the Red House Hotel, and that's why it's called Red House Gardens. So there's a hotel on the site, and there's expansive gardens across Bull Hill, and now today, Leatherhead Park, also named as Red House Gardens, is very much a feature and an open space, and really one of the only main open spaces within the town. And we think there's something quite enjoyable about can we incorporate that name? Can we reflect on the past, and perhaps there's an opportunity for sort of branding this development, Red House Gardens or Red House. Maybe we can do something interesting in the brickwork on one of the buildings on a prominent corner, to really reflect on the fact that this site has a long history and within Leatherhead. And Leatherhead as a town as well is something which is really built up and layered over time. It's not, you couldn't point to the town and say it's all from one era. There's many different eras and historical links in terms of how it's developed. Another theme that we're really keen to explore is that connection with nature. Talking about the open space, the size of it, the scale of it, and what it looks and feels like, how people might use it. How can this connect to nature, the natural surroundings? And you'll all probably enjoy walks across the Surrey Hills and enjoy the river corridor along the River Mole. And the Bull Hill site is really prominently and well placed to connect into those walking routes, to connect into cycle routes, and really to encourage people to walk across it away from the traffic and away from the road. Perhaps if they're connecting both to the station, to the town centre, but also to the wider green and natural links. Finally, what inspiration might we take from Leatherhead as a town and structures and materials across Leatherhead? There's the really quite impressive railway bridges across the River Mole, and maybe there's a motif and an arch that we can start to reflect in some of the residential buildings. Also looking at traditional flint cottages, which are a really distinctive feature of this part of Surrey, and where you might have flint infill panels with brick coining on the corners, and could we reflect that in a contemporary interpretation of a townhouse? So packaging all of this up, we're really enjoying starting to understand what this scheme might start to look like. I'll be sharing some illustrative images with you shortly. And I just want to stress as well that we've still got some way to go, and we're toying with different materials, with what this scheme looks like, how we sort of massage the heights and the look and feel of buildings, to understand what's the best fit for Leatherhead, and obviously taking on board comments and feedback as we go. So this is the current master plan, and I'll leave this on screen for a while so you can digest it. But those of you who attended the previous public consultation sessions may remember the master plan that we presented back then in the summer. And this is an evolution of that. And there's a lot of things which we've changed and we think are a great improvement. So I'm going to start with the open space in the centre. So calling it Red House Gardens. This is a really expansive green space. And what we've done is we centralised it right in the middle of Bull Hill. It's away from the traffic. There's a diagonal route which cuts across it, which will take people from the station to the town centre, but also linking into the surrounding communities. And this is a much larger green space than we were previously proposing. We've looked carefully at the makeup of the buildings that surround it. We've lost one of the uses that was previously shown in the master plan. We'd previously shown a hotel, and that's now been removed from the plans, which has allowed us to really expand the size of that park. So this open space is pretty much comparable with the existing park today. It's anchored by a play area to the north, replacing a worn-out, tired play area today. And we hope that there will be uses around that. There's opportunity for a cafe, for a community space, potential for a health centre, which could spill out into that park, take advantage of a southerly aspect, and really make it a vibrant and welcome part of the town. The park today is a really welcome green space, but it's underutilised, and we think it can work a lot harder for the community. So just explaining this plan in a bit more detail, and I'll start in the bottom right, so the southeast corner. You can see there's an area labelled as townhouses. So effectively, on that corner of the site, this is the closest bit of the site to the town centre, to the conservation area, and to listed buildings of Wesley House, the cottage, so along Station Road to the south. We think that that's an appropriate location for townhouses. That really brings the scale down. These will be 3 to 4 stories in height, and that means that on the most sensitive part of the site, we're really sitting sort of amongst the tree line and not pushing up with any excessive height in a key sensitive location. If I continue clockwise around the plan, there are apartment buildings to the southwest proposed, with the idea being that along the railway corridor, perhaps there's opportunity for some taller buildings where there's less sensitivity. You've got the raised elevated railway line. It's providing some shielding for the new development from the trains passing by. And it's also adjacent to the Mole Business Park on the other side of the tracks, where again, there are some large footprint buildings that are sort of perhaps suitable in close proximity to these kinds of uses. I'll come on to heights shortly. So continuing clockwise from that point, we're showing an office building. The idea being that dragging footfall into the town centre, people living there, people working there through the day, will again, as we mentioned before, encourage people to dwell, stay in the town centre, spend their money, go for a cafe for lunch, etc. And if I carry on, you can see the transport hub to the north, and that's at the bottom of Station Approach, closest point to the station, with the idea being that that's essentially what unlocks the development. By consolidating all of the surface parking which exists on the site today, you'll be aware there's extensive parking to the north on Randalls Road and Station Road. We can take some of that, put it in the transport hub, in addition to office parking and parking for new residents that will be living here. And that basically frees up land for development, for new homes, for new facilities, for an office space, and for community use and potential for a health space. I'll come on to height shortly. Don't worry, I've got slides that tackle that.
What is transport hub?
So the transport hub is effectively a multi-storey car park on the upper levels. So the parking's consolidated into one structure.
Please, out of courtesy to the speaker, please let him finish. I promise you, and you can hold me accountable if I don't come to you, I promise you there will be plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. But the quicker we get through the presentation, the more time we have for your questions.
Instead of transport hub, say car park.
Sure. So transport hub, car park to the north. That will conglomerate all of the parking that's required for a scheme of this size and free up land for development, for open space. It will ensure that that open space is car-free, that we don't have roads driving across it, so kids can play safely, families can enjoy it, and the community can use it a lot better than it is today. We also have some apartment buildings to the east. You can see these square buildings with gaps in between. The idea being that the memorial gardens on the other side of Bull Hill Road are very much a part of this development as well. We can create a new connection point across the road with a crossing, and both Red House Gardens and the memorial gardens can be enjoyed together with both physical and visual permeability between those buildings, making sure they can interact with each other and people can enjoy two different characterful green spaces within Leatherhead Town Centre. So you can see on the on the left-hand side, some of the things that we've been looking to change. I mentioned the larger park. I mentioned we've been looking at the height of buildings, in particular lowering the height of buildings to the southeast. Obviously delivering new homes and ensuring they're of high quality and they have great aspects onto the park and green space, somewhere where people would like to live, and lots of family homes as well. So with the addition of townhouses, this is a traditional townhouse with a back garden, encouraging people at all stages of life to live in the centre of Leatherhead and benefit from the facilities within the town centre and within Bull Hill. So on to building heights. I mentioned that we were looking in detail at how this compares with the previous master plan, which was shown back in summer last year at the public consultation. So the plan on the left-hand side is the master plan that many of you would have seen last year, and the plan on the right-hand side is our current proposals. Effectively, I'll move away so you can see the key on the corner. So effectively, the darker the colour, the taller the building that's proposed. So effectively, the red and the orange hatches on these buildings are the taller elements, and the green and yellow are the lower elements. And so what we've done since the last master plan iteration is really consolidated the taller buildings onto the railway corridor, which has allowed the southeast corner, the most sensitive adjacencies, to reduce in height and ensure we're really creating a welcome arrival from the town centre through Bull Hill, away from the vehicle traffic and across the new park. So we feel that there's opportunity for some taller elements along the railway boundary, and that's something that we've been testing with a particular consultant. There's a townscape consultant who are kind of experts in modelling what these building heights look like from particular viewpoints across Leatherhead. And so what this is an illustration of what the approach from Station Road might look like. So there's very much illustrative views. We're developing the architecture. But you can see in the centre of the image, Station Road. The traffic lights is the existing crossing point by the cedar trees which hang over the road. There's a really distinctive landmark to the south of the scheme. And what we'll be doing is retaining that crossing point, obviously retaining the trees. They're very important to the scheme and to Leatherhead. And introducing a new row of townhouses along Station Road, set back behind a grass verge as a really kind of welcome address onto Station Road. In the background, you can see the railway bridge that passes over the road, and a taller residential building in the background, which is alongside the railway tracks. What we've tried to do is to kind of match the typologies on either side of Station Road. So the buildings on the left-hand side, which are set back, the existing buildings behind greenery, we've looked to do on the right-hand side. So with the new housing, they're set back behind a verge, just ensuring that we're not sort of overcrowding the street and there's a buffer, and that we're also protecting all of the existing trees which are along this edge of the site. And I mentioned the existing crossing point and how we'd like to retain that, and you can see there's a gap between the houses in the centre of the image. The idea being that you can cross the road and access into the park in the same location as you do today. This is an image from the north of the site, looking back towards Bull Hill from Kingston Road, sorry. So this is really the main arrival point into Bull Hill if you were to arrive by car. You might exit the M25, work your way through to Kingston Road, and driving down Kingston Road, you've got the petrol station on the left-hand side. This would be the view up Bull Hill, which curves towards Fairmount House, the office building, and to North Street and the access onto the High Street. So we think there's an opportunity here to really create something of a landmark on the corner and a series of blocks which step up the hill, which take advantage of the topography of the site, with gaps in between, with lots of greenery, and creating linkages into the park beyond. So let me continue. So there's gaps in between the buildings. They're set back from the road, and something which is something of a hostile environment at the moment for pedestrians, where they're walking right on the carriageway. What we're looking to achieve is to set back, create a green verge, plant lots of new trees, lots of new planting, and create a much safer environment for those circumnavigating around the site. That's a shared pedestrian and cycle route, so the idea being that this is a much more friendly development, both for cyclists and pedestrians as well, and just pulling people away from the vehicles. On the left-hand side of the image, you can see the memorial gardens. There's a new crossing proposed across Bull Hill. It's very unsafe to cross today, but we're hoping that with a new crossing point, we can really encourage people to use that green space as well. And you can see also on the top of the hill the new development, which has been built up there recently. And so this gives you a good indication of what this might look like from that particular viewpoint. So keeping on building heights, I mentioned that we've been working with a townscape consultant. So they're expert advisors on how this scheme might sit in with the wider context, how it sits in with Leatherhead, and what's visible, particularly from sensitive viewpoints across the town. So one of the things that they've helped us to do is to model up the proposals and to sort of essentially Y-line them into existing photos. So these views we call Y-lines, and you can see there are two lines overlaid on this photo. There's a pink line and there's a yellow line. So you can see just above my head here, the pink line is a previous master plan that we presented in the summer of last year, and the yellow line is the current master plan as designed today. This is one of the more sensitive views across the town centre. So this is from North Street, looking back towards the War Memorial. We've got Gravel Hill on the right-hand side, and you can see just the greenery in the background. That's the corner of Bull Hill on the southeast corner, and that's particularly where the most sensitivities were with regards to height. So previously, where we had the taller building in that corner, and you can see that outlined in pink there, we've really reduced the height on that corner. It's effectively not encroaching on the view above the War Memorial. There'll be some elements visible just in the background behind the trees, but they're quite distant, and we think that's a real improvement, and we're hoping we can demonstrate that, that we're really sort of starting to understand the sensitivities of this particular view from the surroundings. And we've done a few more of these as well. So this is a closer view of that southeast corner. So you can see the gyratory system coming around on the right-hand side. Lidl supermarket is just on the left-hand side off the page. And then there's quite dense tree planting around this corner. We're looking to retain as many of those trees as possible. And you can see again, with the pink and the yellow lines, what we showed previously was much taller on the corner, and what we're proposing today is very much in line with the existing tree line. So we think it will sit quite comfortably at or below the height of the trees, with some taller buildings on the right-hand side, which are those square blocks stepping down the hill towards Kingston Road in the north. Another view, again from North Street, but further back. So this is where North Street meets the High Street, so where there's the sculpture on the western end of the High Street stepping down to North Street. This is a particularly sensitive view. There's listed buildings along this frontage. And what you can see from this is that where previously in pink, you can see that the taller buildings would have popped up above the ridge line of the existing. All of the development as proposed today is now obscured. So the dotted line effectively indicates that it's all below the ridge line of the existing building. So it will not be visible from this view at all. And then finally, the final view that we've... but finally, a view from the Running Horse pub.
Please, can we let the speaker finish? Please let the speaker finish. We'll come to questions very shortly. And if I can just press you, Speaker, to move as quickly as you can, because we'll get to the questions in. Thank you.
I'll happily answer any questions on the car park. We spent a lot of time talking about that as a team, and happy to answer questions on that. But with regards to the Running Horse pub, this is a listed building again. And we're really aware that it's a particularly sensitive location, and you can see again the pink line of the previous proposals, and the current proposals wouldn't be visible in this view either. We've also highlighted on the Clare House and James House redevelopment, now demolished and soon to be built, and that's shown in that sort of white dotted hatch on the left-hand side as well, so you can get an understanding of the scale of that next to the Running Horse pub. So I'd now like to touch on open space and the area of green space within the current proposals. So similar to the study on heights, we're showing kind of before and after of the previous master plan versus the current master plan. On the far left-hand side, you can see a map of the existing park. So the existing park is highlighted in green, and there's a thick line indicating the kind of usable area of the park effectively. There's a lot of space on the route into the park or around Park House, which isn't necessarily usable. So effectively, there's a sort of central core of the park, and then the wider green hatch is the entirety of that. In yellow, we've indicated all of the surface parking around Red House Gardens. So one of the real sort of issues that was aware to us when we started looking at the site really was that the park is surrounded by a sea of car parking. It's fairly impenetrable. If you want to get to the park from the east, you have to cross through a car park, which we think is really quite an unpleasant way to arrive in that space. And there's really only two entry points or three entry points, which are quite discrete, and from Station Road to the south or the station to the north. And we'd really like to improve that. Previously, we'd shown a smaller park, sort of centrally to the east of the master plan, and some other scattered green places around. And reflecting on the feedback that we had at the public consultation, feedback we had from the professional design review panel and the community members, and feedback from the local authority, and we understood this as a real sort of sensitive point to those that live in Leatherhead. So over the last few months, we've been reviewing that closely with our landscape architect, and Above me here, you can see the current proposals for the park. We have much more green space within the proposals. I mentioned previously that we had looked at some of the building uses. We'd lost the hotel from the master plan, and we've looked to consolidate a lot of that green space centrally into one large aggregated area, and that's what's shown on the right-hand side of this image today. So in terms of size, it's comparable to the existing, sort of plus or minus 5%. We're still sort of measuring the total amount. And we've also introduced some other things which we think are really beneficial. You can see there's a green strip all the way around the outside. I mentioned setbacks of buildings from the curb, and given the hostility of Bull Hill and the traffic directory, we think it's really beneficial to move some of those walking routes away from the carriageway so you're not walking directly next to the traffic and the pollution from cars, and we can create a much nicer environment for those walking around Bull Hill. And this is an illustrative view of that space. Sorry. So this is the southern end of the proposed park in the centre of Bull Hill, and we really want to make sure that we're starting to reflect some of the characteristics of the existing park today. So it's really expansive, lots of open lawn with trees, very much a parkland setting, but we can do a lot more as well. So to the north, you can see there's an element of play. There's a really large play area that we're looking to incorporate to replace the existing. And we hope that this can be a place which is really well used by families, both the existing community around Bull Hill, but also the new residents that will be moving here. And finally, this image shows a close-up of that play area. So to the bottom of the image, you can see that we're starting to use some of the topography of Bull Hill, the change in levels, which can make it for a really interesting play area. You'll be aware when you walk through Bull Hill that it actually slopes downhill by around 2.5 stories from the top end of Bull Hill to the bottom. And there are some embankments within the park as well that were used, they were created for the tennis courts on the original Red House Garden. So we can use some of those embankments to create some interesting slopes and shapes within the play area as well. We've got paths running across this space. This central diagonal path would be a combined pedestrian and cycle route. And then also the building in the foreground on the left. This is a residential building above, but on the ground floor, this is where we're really hoping to explore whether we could provide a health hub or a community hub, perhaps a cafe on the corner. This would be a south-facing facility overlooking the park with lovely views, and next to the play area as well, so perhaps a parent could enjoy coffee whilst their kid's playing. In the background, you can see a connection through to the memorial gardens. I mentioned a new crossing across Bull Hill. That's where that would be located. So we really want to make sure this is permeable, everyone can enjoy it. It doesn't feel like a gated development, but it feels like part of the town that you can access from all directions and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Microphone on? Hi, I'm Ash. I'm from Forster Regeneration Architects. I appreciate your patience. You've all had a lot to listen and digest, so we'll try to keep things swift. So we're dealing with the Swan Centre part of the proposals coming forward and being discussed here this evening. And when we last came to talk to you publicly, we shared our initial ideas of what the Swan Centre could be in terms of what could be included, taking Tony's advice, also in terms of what we could introduce that would rejuvenate those uses within that. And through that process, it was mentioned earlier that we had over 600 people attend, so we had a lot of comments and sort of processes to absorb. But the key kind of headline comments that came out of that was really, how do we build on the identity of Leatherhead and instill that civic pride and use that as our launch pad? What are the day and evening uses, and how do we complement the high street as opposed to compete with it? What will it look like? Not just another town, it's what makes it appropriate for Leatherhead and the conservation area. How can we improve the connectivity, the route between the high street and Lerwick Way? At the moment, it's very disconnected. Other questions, practical questions like, do we need to close the centre to be able to build it? Or why don't we just knock it down and start again? So what have we been doing since then? So working with those comments received and also thinking a lot about what it looks like with also our community design review panel. That's a makeup of half and half professional advisors and also representatives of the community that have been part of that process. So we've been doing a lot of evolution of the design to think about what it looks like and what makes it of its place, what makes it of its Leatherhead. And there's three key components up on the screen there, which are arches. They're quite a common motif and they are found around Leatherhead. Immediately as you come out the station, there's arches, there's the bridge over the River Mole and our immediate neighbour, number 21 on the High Street. Vertical pillars, again, elements that we find within the High Street that have been replicated over and over in different styles. And equally, brickwork detailing and fabulous kind of details and ornate features that create quite interesting parts of the High Street. I'm trying to bring those all together that actually responds to the High Street, makes it of its place, but as a contemporary response to it, so it stands on its own. So there's a side-by-side view there, an existing and a proposed, really just, and the main focus of our attention is on that southwest corner, which is adjacent to the steps, so it's not far from where we are now. So the biggest change is the removal of Leatherhead House, which is the single-storey office building that goes over the main entrance. And a gentleman at the back was inquiring about whether or not we're proposing to enclose it, are we proposing, so part and part. So the main significant alteration is the removal of Leatherhead House to actually open up that frontage and actually have a better connection between the centre itself and the High Street, and hopefully the centre can do more for the High Street. But also, you see on the left-hand image, you've got the two light wells that are in the existing service deck. The cinema box is actually located to the rear of the centre, so it's this white box sort of behind me here. So we'd be partly enclosing the back one, but opening up the front piece. And then actually that main frontage is focused around that sort of central community space, which is sort of the market square to which the main leisure uses and restaurant uses sit. So what does it look like? So this is a view taken during the day. So this is effectively stood in front of the southwestern entrance as it stands at the moment, looking towards it. So what you're seeing is effectively that view from the lower High Street, removing Leatherhead House, which to try and open up that frontage into the town, into the centre itself, and with those F&B restaurants fronting that main square, with the cinema to the rear, and then actually what we're also looking at as part of this is the improvement works to the centre in terms of everything you can, what improves the retail environment to make it a pleasant place to go and shop. Also thinking about materials, so I think in the last round of information that we shared, there was a lot of glass, and we've had lots of comments about, okay, more brick, what makes it fit within the conservation area. So we've been looking at brickwork detailing, looking at our response in terms of those arch motifs and how we can introduce those into the proposal. And the final slide from me, which is also kind of what that looks like of an evening, and kind of going to Tony's point that he raised earlier very much, which is about the daytime and the evening economy, and hopefully this being kind of the beginning of or a catalyst for encouraging economic activity within the town centre and increasing the number of visitors that stay and spend money in town. So the 6.6% was mentioned earlier. The intention is to really hold on to that spend and, for all ages to spend more time in the town. And ultimately this become the catalyst for something rather good and fabulous for Leatherhead. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to say a few closing words before we, I think, go on to the Q&A. I do want to linger on this slide just for a little bit of time, though, because I think it's really important. And hopefully you've picked up a sense, a theme through this as to what we are trying to achieve and how we have listened to reflect. We won't have hit everyone's notes. you won't be happy on everything. That's the reality of development. I've talked about the pushes and pulls. But we are delivering an awful lot for the revitalisation of Leatherhead here. So first and foremost, new homes. 450 new homes. And then bottom right, protecting the green belt. If you don't have those homes in the town centre, they have to go somewhere. There is a lot of drive from all areas of the country to solve this housing crisis. So going in the centre protects the green belt, but it creates all these multiplicative effects in terms of that increasing of local spend. It creates a lot of positivity in the short term in terms of 400 full-time jobs. At Kier, we've just started a campaign to recruit 100 apprentices into the business. We're going out to the local schools. We want to get some of those folks to come into this wonderful industry that we're in, which creates great opportunities for people. But ultimately, it will create 900 new jobs in the future as well, through the office, through the retail, through that regeneration of the centre. The 3.8 million community infrastructure levy, that's a kind of a mechanic that government introduced many years ago, but fundamentally, that is a receipt to Mole Valley. And this joint venture should create profits for Mole Valley, should create land receipts, should create council tax, lots of things that just help them to help the area. Over 10 million of investment in the Swan Centre, that cannot be achieved without doing something on Bull Hill. And we're trying to do that in the most sympathetic and the most sensible, most sustainable way. We've talked about boosting the daytime and nighttime economy. We've talked about connectivity. And hopefully, as I say, I heard a lot of talk about improving the green spaces and obviously the perceived threat to that. Hopefully you saw something that, to my mind, does improve that quality, does improve that usability, does make it feel like more of a kind of event space rather than almost a pass-through space. Final thing just on here is the potential delivery of the health hub. We really hope that we can create something where we're bringing GP services in a new facility into the centre of town. We can't promise these things because lots of people are involved, but that is certainly the objective, to drive that and bring that into the centre of Leatherhead. As you said, this is not a fait accompli. This is just another stage in the consultation, and really that consultation sort of starts now. There's a number of events here, a webinar on the 10th of March, in-person events on the 13th and the 15th of March, other opportunities beyond today to have your say, to feedback as to where we go on these things. And in terms of the project timeline, effectively we're going through that consultation to the 24th of March. Our aim is to refine and finalise and put in what's known as a hybrid planning application, effectively the master plan and a little bit of detail within that in the summer of this year. Hopefully we get that approved in the winter, and we're starting construction in the spring of 2027, and the first stage of that is heavily focused on the Swan Centre and that revitalisation that's been talked about earlier. Listen, that's all I want to say. I think I hand now back to Tony.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Super, thank you. I wonder whether we could have the theatre lights up, please, because I'm going to have to see people as they raise their hands. We're going to have to run this really efficiently, I'm afraid. There's a lot of people here this evening. I know there's a lot of feeling in the room and people want to ask questions. So what I'm going to ask you kindly to do is, if you could just ask one question. We're going to give you the microphone, and to be efficient, we'll get you to ask the question and then hand the mic back, and we'll get the mic to the next person ready to go. You can ask questions in three ways. Raise your hand on the microphone. If you don't want to do that, you can scan the QR code behind me and type in and ask an online question. Or you can visit menti.com and enter that code. All of the online questions will be picked up in the FAQs that are sent round as part of the consultation process. So asking an online question is just as good a way to ask one as to raise your hand. So I think without further ado, first of all, thank you to our panel this evening. Let's open up for questions. As I say, please, one question each. Give the microphone back and we'll get the mic to the next person. So I'm going to go to the gentleman in the blue jumper next to the lady in green. there, please. Thank you. Of course I can. Yes, yeah, of course I can. How about if I stand there? That's fine. Then I'm not obscuring the panel.
Right, local
Sir, yeah, thank you.
Local resident for 17 years, live near the station. With regards to Clare House and James House, what's the provision for flood defence along the river there?
Thank you, sir. If I can get you to give the mic back, and we'll give the mic to the lady in front actually was next. Apologies. Flood defences. Emma, do you want to take that?
It's a really valid question.
No, I don't think the mic's on, is it?
I'm waiting for the tech. There we go.
There we are.
So the proposed developments by McCarthy and Stone have had the levels adjusted to take account of the increased risk of flooding through climate change. That's one reason why the ground floor is not residential, but is proposed to be a community space and a cafe. The Environment Agency have done lots of work over the years to look at solutions to flooding, and there is no one solution for all sorts of reasons. We can go into more detail on our FAQ. They did have a temporary defence barrier, but it was incredibly expensive and not particularly effective, so that has been redeployed to focus on the Thames, where the risk to property and life is deemed to be greater. So there is no one solution. There are a number of low-tech but effective solutions that are being explored, which effectively involve placing logs to reduce the speed of runoff from the Surrey Hills into the Rivermore catchment. They have also looked at creating storage facilities within the Surrey Hills, but that requires private landowner support and engagement. So it's a complex and evolving solution, but it's very much... It's deemed to be appropriate. Given the adjustment to the levels and the use of the ground floor, it's been consented. Neither the Environment Agency nor Surrey County Council, as a lead flood agency, raised any objections, so it is deemed to be appropriate. And there was building there before.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for your question. Sir, lady in front, thank you.
Yes, I didn't hear anything about addressing the transport problems around Leatherhead, around Bull Hill, where there's accidents time and time again. And it looks to me as though you're going to increase the risk of accidents with the multi-storey car park being placed just under the bridge, which already has a huge volume of traffic, especially when the M25, that gets clogged up. It seems to me you're increasing the amount of traffic around the town.
Thanks for the question. If you could give the mic back. And
thank you for that. I'm happy to answer that
Thank
one.
you.
So in terms of the highways and the transport network around Bull Hill, we're well aware that it's a really congested part of the local kind of infrastructure, and we're hoping that we can do some measures that improve that. So it's both congested, but it's also really hostile for pedestrians, for cyclists. One of the things we're doing is looking at wider connectivity around Bull Hill. New crossing points will help to slow down traffic, not create traffic jams, but encourage people to drive more carefully and make it a safer environment for pedestrians. We're also looking at stitching in with the wider walking, cycling routes, etc., to make sure that this part of town is really permeable, people can move through it easily, and connect in with the wider areas. In terms of transport and vehicle movements, previously, the master plan that we showed last summer at the public consultation, we had the transport hub to the north, and you may remember that access and egress from that structure was to Randalls Road to the north, directly opposite station approach. We're well aware that cars dive down underneath the railway bridge there quite fast. That's a bit of a congested junction. It's narrow. It's a really challenging point to get people across the road, which is one of the reasons why we're providing a new crossing that's will be much improved to the existing. Dumping essentially all of those cars onto that junction was creating some issues, and we have a highways expert who's modelling all of the surrounding routes and understanding what impact our proposals have on them. One of the changes we've made in the current master plan is that we've flipped the access into that structure. So all the vehicle access routes into the transport hub will now be from the south, not from the north. So they're from a less congested part of the ring road around Bull Hill. Having said that, it is still a ring road, and it is still a real problem. We know that traffic does back up. And I think one of the things that we need to be really careful with, and that the scheme facilitates, is that it doesn't prohibit any future interventions to that one-way system. In the future, should vehicle use change, maybe car use drops off, it could be calmed down, So together with new pedestrian crossings, but also there may be long into the future various highways interventions that could turn it into a two-way road, for instance, rather than one way. And we wouldn't prohibit that with this development.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to, in fairness, I'm just going to take a question online, and then I'm going to go to the gentleman in the blue top there. Amber, would you like to read one of the questions out that one of our colleagues online's asked?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions come in online, lots of people watching at home. In absolute numbers, how many homes are going to be included in the 2025 master plan, and how many of those will be affordable?
So,
How many homes in the master plan, and how many of those homes are going to be affordable homes?
So the current master plan shows...
I'm not sure the mics. Could you?
The current... Can anybody hear me? Oh, there we go.
That's better.
The current master plan has circa 450 homes. The affordable housing provision will be centred around a viability assessment that is submitted as part of our planning application. The challenge with viability on this site is linked to the significant amount of infrastructure and the costs associated to delivering the works on the Swan Centre. Currently, our viability assessment has the provision of about 20% affordable homes, which is a mix of 1, 2, 3 beds and a mix of tenures. But ultimately, that will be determined through the planning application process.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the gentleman there, and once you've asked your question, if you could kindly hand the mic back, and then we're going to go, I'm afraid, just to spread the questions right up the back over the left-hand side there. Lady waving her hand. Thank you. Gentleman.
Good evening. Lived in Leatherhead for 17 years. I've known the town for nearly 60. My question is, as regards the parking that's already in existence, how many car parking spaces is that? And does the transport hub allow for the 400 resident homes that you're going to build and the parking that will produce? But also, there was an accident the other day and the air ambulance had to land in Bill Hill. Will they be able to do that once you've got your high-rise buildings there?
Thanks for the question. Thank you. Who's going to take that? Yeah, thank you.
Hello there. Yeah, happy to answer those points. In terms of, starting from the back, in terms of air ambulance access, all that kind of thing, I mean, that's really well outside of our expertise. But there's a really... There's a really large, expansive green space that's proposed. It's the same size, roughly, as Leatherhead Park today. Sure. Well, that's something that I'm sure someone with the correct expertise would be able to advise on. And sorry, can you just remind me your point on the transport, the parking spaces? So I think existing Randalls Road, Station Road car parking is around 350 odd spaces across those two car parks. We're looking to reprovide some of them, but not all of them. I couldn't give you exact numbers within the transport hub, as it's a bit of a moving target as we understand the quantity of spaces that are well used across those two car parks. We've had surveys done, and we understand what sort of their peak capacity is, how people use them, at what points of the day. Is it commuter traffic? Is it people parking for the town centre? And we also need to understand what impact a new development on the Swan Centre might have on those two car parks as well. But in short, it's been noted. It's part of the proposal for the transport hub. Many of them would be reprovided, and also all of the new homes across the development will have parking provision. It won't necessarily be one-to-one provision. Townhouses will have a space per house, and flats will have a reduced number, but all of that will be within the transport hub.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the lady at the top there with the phone and the microphone, and then we'll do one online. Hello. Hi.
Hi. There's been 2,000 signatures petitioning to stop the Bull Hill Tower blocks. In tonight's proposal, you've showed that instead of making the buildings lower, you've just moved them around. Why are you still pushing for them, and how many of you pushing for these tower blocks actually live in eyesight of them?
Thanks for the question. Thank you. I'm going to come down to that lady next, ready for the next one. Who's going to take that one? Emma, is it you? Yeah.
Shall I start?
Tough question. Thank you for it. Yeah.
So the vision for development on Bull Hill goes back to 2015, 2016, before we realised the challenges with doing anything with the Swan Centre from a viability perspective. And the principle was around bringing new residents into the town centre to help boost the town centre economy. That was the starting point. We've then gone through the long development of the local plan process, which seeks to achieve some of the housing numbers targeted for Moore Valley, but not all of them. The administration couldn't accommodate the original housing numbers because they weren't prepared to lose the quantum of Greenbelt. So brownfield first was the principle that was factored into our current local plan to help us meet the housing numbers. We now have an even greater housing target because of the high levels of unaffordability in Moore Valley. It's up there. It's not a good place to be, to have that level of disparity between wages and house prices. So this form of dense development in a very sustainable location, and by sustainable I mean very close to the town centre, close to places to work and close to the really key railway station, it enables that housing to be delivered in a really sustainable way and protects the greenbelt. If that housing doesn't go there, there are very limited alternatives in Moray to accommodate that. 2 other sites were identified as part of the local plan and they've been withdrawn between Regulation 18 and the current version plan. One was opposite on the Royal Mail site and one was a Greenbelt site in North Leatherhead. That much needed housing has to go somewhere. 20% is modelled as affordable, but flats by their very nature are more accessible to people trying to get on that first rung of the housing ladder. And it means they're taken out of the never-ending a trap of rented homes where you don't know, perhaps from 6 months to the next, where your home's going to be, where your kids are going to go to school, or can you still get to your job in a way which accommodates all of your care and responsibilities. So that is the reason why we are still pushing for development of this scale and nature on Bull Hill. Plus, that level of density is required to make the whole scheme viable. If it's not viable, it won't happen, whether it be with Keir or with another partner, it just won't happen. So that's the answer.
Thanks very much for the question. Thank you, Emma. I'm going to take one online, and then I'm going to go to that gentleman there with the yellow, the lady there, and then the gentleman there with the yellow jacket, and then I'll come to the chap with the blue. Over to you, Amber.
Which one can I choose?
Pick one. There's lots of questions online. I can't read them, so I can't pick one.
There's a question about why we're proposing another office when there are currently vacant offices on the business parks.
That's a tough one, yeah. I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to go to that lady next, and then I'll come to you. I promise I'll come to you. Yeah, carry on, please.
Okay.
Yeah, Emma.
So, in brief, the reason why we're looking for a new office building is because it will be of a quality that doesn't currently exist in Moore Valley. So the current office stock on some of the business parks doesn't meet modern occupier requirements. And well, you may disagree, but that's the evidence that we've had. There's a demand and there's an opportunity to bring in high quality employment space to help balance out footfall across the town centre.
Emma, thank you very much. Thanks, guys. I want to come to that lady there. Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah.
It's not so much a question, it's more of a comment.
Sure.
As a Red Hill resident, I know the light.
You know the light well.
I do, and I believe you're wrong. It's not just for families. People go for dates or to meet their friends.
Oh, excellent.
As well.
Yeah, thank you.
The thing I love about living in Red Hill the most is there's no cars. It's completely pedestrianised. Whilst it does cause traffic, if we choose to be car drivers, we've got to stick in traffic. That's on us. It's also full of flats, which has no parking. They have to pay for parking in council car parks. Bull Hill looks fantastic, particularly with the new revised green space and the difference in changing in levels. But particularly, there's not a car in sight on there, so well done.
Thank you for your question. I'll get you to give the... I've got to go to the gentleman in the yellow jacket. He's been waiting a long while. I'm then going to go to the gentleman in the blue who's been waiting a long while as well.
Just going back to the office question, which is one I typed in. I work at KBR locally here. There's Unilever have moved out of there. That's perhaps 700 office spaces there. I think it's called Calvin House. It was called Calvin House. That is mostly empty. Olympus House, which is on that campus. That's mostly empty. Go down the Kingston Road, all those offices. I know there's a guy down there, he set a canteen up. He can't get the people, they've just left. So why on earth do we need more office space and it is high quality? The Unilever building is state of the art. There's the art building up there as well, which I used to work in. That's empty as well now. So your statement about quality is wrong, and we don't need any more spaces.
So if I may...
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the question. Who's going to take that?
I'll tackle it.
Emma's going to take it again. Well done, Emma.
And I'll
Thank
hand over
you.
to Alex as well. That view we heard a lot. It's come up throughout the consultation. The reason Unilever left is because they wanted a net zero facility, which whilst we might think their current site was high quality, it wasn't high quality enough to meet their ESG targets. And I think this is the demand by occupiers of the future. Alex, do you want to pick up the thread?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, based on the conversations that we've been having with occupiers, that they can't, to meet their strategic requirements, they can't physically stay in the buildings that they're in. We're also looking to attract the institutional investors that will also only invest in net zero carbon offices. So look, appreciate the comments and where the empty buildings are in Leatherhead, but we are having very active conversations with occupiers and investors to bring that money into Leatherhead.
Guys, thank you very much. Sorry, got to go to the gentleman in the blue jacket there. Microphone just there. There.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who's put in a lot of hard work on this. And the green space in the centre does seem to have got a bit bigger. Did you consider building some of the flats for people to live in on Leech Wood? If you don't know what Leech Wood is, it's owned by the NHS. It's up by the community hospital. It's a big open space which is really just not used. It's about a 10-minute walk to the station, so that would lower the market values of the flats, but it would keep those people healthy. Did you consider other areas such as Leech Wood?
Thanks for the question. I'll get you to give the mic back and we'll go to the next person.
The NHS could do with the money.
Thanks for the question. Who's going to take that? Emma again. Thank you, Emma.
So the land's not owned by MVDC, nor do we have any control over its delivery. I don't know whether it was... Correct. So we as MVDC don't have any control as landowner over that site. Whether it's going to come forward either through a local plan allocation or as a speculative plan application, I don't know. Outside the scope of tonight's presentation, I'm afraid.
Thanks for the question. Lady in the black jacket there. Thank you.
On the subject of health, there are no transport access to Leatherhead Hospital. That's why it couldn't be considered there. I'm delighted to see that there's a potential for a health hub in the Red House grounds, but what I see on the screen is no access for patients coming by car or ambulances to collect people from the... It's always this problem of access for transport.
Thank you for the question. Who's going to take that? Yeah, thank you.
Hello. I think you made a really good point there, and I think that's... sorry, I'll speak clearer. That's a really good point, and it's really important that if a health centre becomes part of these proposals, that it's really accessible to the public. So a few things. Its location on the site is the very closest point to the station. So those coming by foot, by train, they can really easily get across the road to a potential health centre. In terms of vehicle access, it's right next door to the proposed transport hub. So the idea also behind the transport hub, this multi-storey car parking facility, is that it can provide car parking, drop-off facilities, minibus spaces for all the kind of needs that the health hub requires. So that will be literally 20 metres walk. It couldn't be any closer, and the idea will be that that structure will allow the health hub to function and to have vehicle access.
Thank you for that question. Thanks for the answer. Could we just do one online, and then I'm going to go to, sorry, the gentleman who's got the mic there. Just one online, and then we'll come to you, sir. Thank you.
There are two themes coming through a lot of the online questions. One is, why not just have a lovely park on Bull Hill and do the Swan Centre works on their own? And the other is about local authority reorganisation. So perhaps the team could answer the first.
Yeah, I mean, the reality on the first point is you cannot fund, I think it's fair to say, the Swan Centre redevelopment without doing something in Bull Hill. As I said, they are two sides of the same coin, I'm afraid. So one does not happen without the other.
Can I also add in there that yes, there is the financial side of it, but we also have to reflect on what Tony was talking about, which is that if you want the town centre to thrive and be revitalised, it needs all of those people on Bull Hill and on Red sort of House Gardens, the office workers coming in, the people needing to go for their shopping, the children coming in for the nurseries. They are completely interrelated, so you can't just expect to put a cinema and make the public realm look better and all of a sudden that is going to revitalise Leatherhead. It's not going to happen.
Thank you. Gentleman there in the black coat. Thanks.
Tony, can I just
sorry, do you want to say... Oh,
yeah,
sorry, too soon.
Just two points. So obviously there's a huge amount of risk attached to development. So yes, in theory, the local authority, if it had the funds, could choose just to invest that in the Swan Centre. Should we? Could we? I think, well, at the same time, we hear feedback. We don't want us to be like a Woking, but you know, there are risks attached to development. Is that something that a local authority should do? Open question. On local government reorganisation, Karen Vermicum, our chief executive here, she's very much, and the leader, very much part of those ongoing conversations, but from a technical perspective, if MVDC exists no more, by operation of law, as they call it, all of the assets, contracts, liabilities transfer to the successor entity. So that itself is not a barrier to this scheme coming forward.
Thanks, Emma. I'm getting a 3-minute warning. Gentleman there, then I'm going to go to the gentleman right up in the back who's had his hand up for quite some time on the banister.
Thank you very much. The local government reorganisation was actually going to be one of my points. But at what point can the Mole Valley Council, if what you said is the case, is unable to make a contract for this to go forward? And also, what are the liabilities on council taxpayers with this? Because that really concerns me as somebody who lives near the station.
Yep. Thanks for your question, sir. Thanks.
So if I take the first part and I'll hand over to Alex for a second. So we are already in contract. So the JV has been established and we've already entered into conditional land transfer agreements and the members agreement with KIR. So the contract's already in place, so that's why it will just transfer. We're already in contract. I'll hand over to Alex to... So, yeah. Okay. It's... So the narrative we used... At the time we got the council approval to proceed, we explained we've procured a partner, not a scheme. So we are in contract with our partner, KIR Property Developments. So we have a joint venture set up, an LLP, and we have conditional land transfer agreements. The what is what we are consulting on. Hopefully we've demonstrated tonight that you said we have responded and there's a further stage of consultation to go. But it's underpinned by a local plan, site allocation for the Swan Centre and for Bull Hill. In terms of reorganisation, I think what I've said is as much. But in terms of funding the scheme, I think Alex can pick that up.
Yep, sure. So KIR are funding the development proposals here. KIR recover MVDC's 50% share of the equity required to do so out of the development returns. And then ultimately, what's left over out of those development returns get delivered back to each partner. So the profit is split 50-50. Based on our current modelling, the value created for MVDC is in the realms of about £35 million, and then an annual revenue stream of about an additional £1 million as well on top of that.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the gentleman at the top there. I'm getting the 30-second warning. So
earlier you showed us some pictures from down the bottom of Kingston Road from the town of what the buildings would look like, but they're the 4 or 5-storey ones. But you showed nothing from the other side of the railway when us residents that live that side, all we're going to see is 10, 12-storey buildings. You had no pictures of what potentially we're going to see. Why didn't you show us that? You've showed us the good things, the lower buildings, but you showed us nothing of the tall buildings. why have you not done that? Seems a little bit disingenuous. Apologies.
Thanks for the question, sir. Answer. Yeah, thanks.
Can you hear me okay? There we go. Thanks for your point. We're not trying to...
Why are you building more in Dorking?
We're out of time. I'm going to take one more question.
Sure.
After yours,
I'm happy,
sir, I'm going to take one more
to-
question, sir.
I'm happy to come back to this point. In terms of Toolbit, we're certainly not trying to pull the wool over your eyes in terms of where the height's distributed and what that looks like across the development. This is very much a snapshot in time of where we are with the design proposals. There's a new round of consultation coming up next month. There'll be more to show there, and that's where... Yeah. No, understood. I completely understand your point. What we've shown are views from the most sensitive locations. We've been aware of the conservation area, aware of listed buildings, and we've been really keen to demonstrate how the proposal looks from those sensitivities. I'm aware that there are tall buildings that we're proposing. If you come along to the consultation events, only a few weeks' time, we'll certainly be able to shed some more light on that.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to take one more question and then I'm going to draw the evening to a close and tell you how you can engage further with further questions. So, gentleman there, you've been waiting a while, so apologies.
I'm a resident of Fetcham and therefore part of the catchment you've been talking about. And I agree with the objectives of what the joint venture is trying to achieve to improve the footfall and economic viability of Leatherhead, so I understand that. And I actually, unlike some, don't object to some tall buildings. I think they are necessary to avoid...
Please let the gentleman finish out of courtesy,
I think
please.
that, though we might not like them, it does reduce the need to build on the green belt. So I think one has to take that into consideration. However, what I'm concerned about is that we're dealing with bubbles of development. We're not seeing an integrated plan for all of Leatherhead, especially with the transport. And so I'd like, we're getting told about details of the brickwork and materials. What I would like to understand is how is the transport plan going to work? A lot of people have talked about transport. We've heard comments before at previous consultations and aware that transport needs to be addressed. But it won't, we're saying, we need... An answer came back from an architect. We're hoping to do some measures that can improve transport. It's absolutely fundamental that you look at how the transport system, the one-way system, works, and that you don't block any future opportunities to improve that.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the question. Thank you. Who's going to take transport?
Stuart and I might add something afterwards.
Stuart, and then Emma will say a few words.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, happy to respond on transport again. That's something which we'll certainly be able to flesh out in more detail at the consultation event. Our highways engineer will be there and we'll be able to talk detail about how what impact this will have on the surrounding road networks and how it will interact with the wider town as a whole. What I can say in my capacity as an architect is that we're not prohibiting any sort of more radical changes to the gyratory system, but the scheme that we're beginning to present today is looking within Bull Hill and within the Swan Centre at those two sites.
But that's the problem.
I'm going to draw... Sorry, sir. I'm going to draw it to a close now. Thank you. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's bothered to come this evening. This, as I said earlier, this is emotive stuff. It's really important, and everyone's got different views, and those views are important views. We've all got different views, and we all see things through different lenses and perspectives. I just want to say thank you, but also this is not the end. This is the start of a process. Please complete the questions, any further questions as per the earlier slide. The Leatherhead Partnership will publish, I'm told, a set of frequently answered questions, and they will base that on what you've asked this evening and any of the online questions as well. And as I say, there will be further opportunities to comment and input your views into this. I'd like to thank our speakers this evening, and perhaps you could just, in the traditional way, put your hands together. Thank you. thank you all again, and I hope you have a safe journey home. Thank you.